Sufism. The meaning of Sufism can be summarized in the saying attributed to the Prophet Muhammad regarding Ihsan, to worship Allah as if you see him, and if you do not see him, then he sees you. Sufism focuses on the purification of the soul through the purification of the heart, leading to the state of being with God without any worries. To reach this level, a person must go through several stages. In some paths, their number reaches 100, but the most common are 7 or 3, and it is the commanding soul with evil inclinations, then the reproachful soul, an internal struggle within the soul between the inclination towards God or towards Satan, then the inspired soul, then the reassured soul, where it triumphs over itself, then the contented soul, which is content with God, and the pleasing soul, which earns the pleasure of God, then the perfect soul. All of these stages are for the purpose of repairing the inner self so that the outward self may be sound. And this path of fixing the inner self, the heart, by knowing oneself, requires several things, including isolation, silence, staying awake, and hunger, with hunger being the most important. Sufism is heavily influenced by the philosophy of the Stoics, established by the Syrian philosopher Zeno of Citium, where you cannot reach an understanding of Sufi knowledge except by walking the path, and you cannot walk the path without taming the self. Sufism interprets the Quran in terms of its apparent and hidden meanings, but the latter is more important, interpretation of signs. That's why they are interested in the opening letters of the chapters, and in their phrases and poetry. They focus on symbolism, as poetry is very important to Sufism. The Syrian poet Adonis believes that Sufism and poetry are intertwined with each other, where their words are based on inspiration and intuition and knowledge. Unveiling. During the remembrance of God, the veil between the heart of the worshipper and the divine manifestation disappears. The worshipper sees things that cannot be seen with the naked eye in their ordinary life. Sufis believe that this disclosure enables them to know the unseen or increase their ability to judge matters and events in the context of life, as if they know it is in someone else's heart. Al-Tajalli is the manifestation of divine light on the heart of a person directly without any veil, after the stage of mushahada witnessing. This is the highest stage where a person transcends the worldly existence or reaches what the Sufis call the unity of existence. These stages are named differently in Sufi circles, but these are the most widespread. The time period for these stages is not specified, but some of the points of the prophets can be followed and generalized, such as Prophet Moses on Mount Sinai, Jesus Christ, and Prophet Muhammad in the cave for 40 days. And perhaps the period may vary according to the degree. Of course, this is the narrative from the cognitive side and according to the same beliefs. Perhaps you have personally experienced this, or perhaps you are not a believer but can benefit from this by knowing the religious consciousness that you may deal with in daily life. Baqa wa fana, Sufi term signifying subsistence and passing away. Fana refers to not seeing anything outside of God, meaning being connected and disappearing in Him, and then the worshipper may reach Baqa, meaning seeing God in everything. These are two different concepts that require us to carefully examine the meanings of the words. States and stations. Hal and Maqam. States hal are like blessings and afflictions that befall a person and are temporary. As for stations Maqam, they are the ascent to a higher degree due to the struggle of the self. The number of stations varies, but most consider them to be 7, starting with the struggle and ending with sincerity. The Sharia exoteric path, and the truth mystical truth. As a result of their reliance on their personal experiences, each Sufi had a truth that differed from the other regarding matters of worship and other Sharia rulings. Some even abandoned the outward prayer because they believed they had reached a stage where they no longer needed to perform such actions, which practically meant going against the Sharia. This was condemned by Sufi scholars who sent several messages stating that the inward and outward should be in harmony and that adherence to the Sharia is necessary. Is Sufism authentic in religion? This question cannot be decisively determined as Sufism is not specific to a particular religion such as Islam. Therefore, there is controversy surrounding it, and it is believed to be derived from Neoplatonism or ancient religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and other Eastern religions. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali is considered the first to reconcile between Islamic jurisprudence and Sufism, thus creating the Ash'ari Sufi current. The strongest opposing current to this was the Hanbali Salafi current, led by Ibn Taymiyyah. Throughout history, the dispute between these two schools of thought has been the most prominent within Sunni circles. What are the most prominent Sufi paths? The Sufi path is a system of behaviors, worship, remembrance, adhkar, beliefs, and practices established by the sheikh, leader of the Sufi path, and followed by its adherents. Among the most famous Sufi paths are the Qadiriyya, Abdul Qadir Gilani, the Rifa'iyya, Ahmed al-Rifai, the Shadhiliyya, Abu al-Hasan al-Shadili, the Naqshbandiyya, and others that gained popularity after the fall of Baghdad to the Mongols. Various Sufi paths share different practices, including regular litany urad, pledging allegiance bay'ah, wearing Sufi rag kirka, and the relationship between the sheikh and the disciples. The number of Sufi paths is countless, as they are based on the individual's spiritual experience, which varies from one person to another. The daily supplications dua by the followers is considered a secret of the path. Additionally, circles of remembrance zikr circle are held, involving the chanting of poetry and sometimes drumming. When a new person joins Sufism, the first step is to pledge allegiance to the sheikh. Then, the disciple is often taught the greatest name of God, which is considered a secret among the secrets of the Sufi path. This name helps the disciple in their spiritual journey, and each Sufi order has its own unique way of defining and reciting it. After receiving the greatest name of God, the disciple moves on to the stage of seclusion, which used to last for 40 days in the past, and now is limited to 3 days. During this time, the disciples isolates themselves, devoting their time to remembrance of Allah. They suffice themselves with minimal food, refrain from talking to others, and only leave for prayer times. Sunnat al-Tariqa is the chain of transmission that traces the origin of a Sufi order's teachings from its founders to the Prophet Muhammad. All Sufi orders end their Sunnat al-Tariqa with Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib after the Prophet, except for the Naqshbandi order, which starts with Abu Bakr and ends with the sheikh who received the Sufi rag. Each sheikh appoints their successor, and those who do not have a sunnat from sheikhs are called Awaisi, named after Awais al-Qarni from Yemen, whom the Prophet recognized as a pious worshipper of Allah despite not meeting him in person. And whoever takes knowledge through spirituality from a master in Alam al-Arwah, the world of spirits, is called a Waisi.